My name is Mark Anderson, and for as long as I can remember, I believed life was a series of predictable moments, a steady rhythm of work, weekend dinners with friends, and quiet evenings at home with Jessica. Jessica, my wife of 3 years, had a smile that could light up any room and a talent for making even the mundane seem magical. By all outward appearances, our life in suburban Cleveland was picture-perfect. Yet beneath the surface, I would later discover, lay a labyrinth of secrets I never dreamed existed. Jessica's transformation had begun 2 years ago when she ventured into the world of OnlyFans. At first, I was apprehensive. I didn't fully understand how this digital platform could coexist with the life we'd built together. But she was persuasive, a mix of charm and practicality that convinced me her work was simply a creative outlet, a means of empowerment. After all, half the town seemed to be buzzing about her latest posts and exclusive content. Friends at dinner parties would murmur admiringly, "There goes Jessica, the star," as if she were a celebrity rather than the woman I loved. One warm Friday evening, I found myself at our favorite local diner with my longtime friend Ryan Mitchell. Between bites of greasy fries and sips of iced tea, we discussed everything from the latest sports scores to the city's new art exhibit. Ryan, ever the candid soul, eventually steered the conversation to Jessica. "Mark, you know I'm not trying to pry," he said, leaning forward as if about to share a secret, "but have you ever wondered why so many people are so obsessed with Jessica these days?" I shrugged. "Obsessed? You mean her OnlyFans?" "I mean, yeah, it's amazing how popular she's become. But I trust her, Ryan. I know what I see at home." Ryan's eyes narrowed, though his tone remained gentle. "It's just, when a woman becomes the talk of the town, sometimes it's for reasons more complicated than just art. Not that I'm saying there's anything wrong, but people talk." I chuckled, dismissing his concern. People will talk about anything these days, especially when someone looks as stunning as Jessica. Besides, you know me, I don't buy into gossip. The conversation shifted then to lighter topics, and I couldn't help but feel a small pang of unease, as if Ryan's words had hinted at a reality too messy for my simple, comfortable life. At home that night, as Jessica prepared dinner, the house was filled with the delicious aroma of garlic and rosemary. Her laughter in the kitchen was infectious, and for a moment all was well. Later, as we sat at the dining table, Jessica recounted an encounter from her day, a meeting with Samantha Carter, her business manager and friend, who was known for her quick wit and bold fashion sense. "You should have seen the comment section on my latest post," Jessica said animatedly. "Half the town is practically drooling over my new shoot. I mean, who would have thought that the girl next door could stir up so much passion?" Her eyes sparkled with mischief, and I couldn't help but smile at her enthusiasm. "It sounds like you're enjoying every bit of it," I remarked, genuinely happy for her success. She paused, a flicker of something unreadable crossing her face before she smiled again. "I am, Mark. It's exciting, daring. But it's still me, you know? Always yours." And so, life went on, with Jessica rising in fame and the town's admiration growing. I began to notice small details, a fleeting glance at her phone when I wasn't looking, whispered phone calls she quickly ended when I entered the room. I dismissed them as quirks of someone juggling an unconventional career, never suspecting that these were the first hints of a deeper deception. One weekend, while I was busy at a friend's barbecue, I overheard snippets of conversation. Lisa Bennett, another close friend of Jessica's, mentioned something that made my stomach twist in knots. "Jessica's been so secretive lately," Lisa confided to Michael Rhodes, a mutual friend with a reputation for his unfiltered opinions. "And I don't just mean about her work. There's something off about her late-night calls. I think she's hiding something." Michael scoffed. "Come on, Lisa. You're reading too much into it. Jessica has always been a bit mysterious. But she's our girl. If there's anyone who could handle a little scandal, it's her." The conversation faded into the background as I silently questioned everything. Was it possible that the brilliant, vibrant woman I adored was hiding another facet of her life, one that might hurt me when the truth emerged? I pushed the thought away, convincing myself that my insecurities were playing tricks on me. At home, the tension was palpable but unspoken. I watched Jessica laugh with Samantha over coffee one afternoon, the two women sharing private jokes and exchanging knowing looks. A part of me wondered if there was more to their friendship than met the eye. Yet, each time I brought up my concerns, Jessica would simply dismiss them with a light touch on my arm and a reassuring smile. "It's nothing, Mark. Just business and friendship. Don't worry." Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that behind her flawless exterior lurked a hidden narrative, a story of infidelity and betrayal that would shatter my world if ever uncovered. Even as I tried to cling to the comfort of our shared past, I sensed that the threads of our life were slowly unraveling. That night, as I lay awake in the dark, my mind replayed every conversation, every fleeting moment. I resolved to trust Jessica, to believe in the woman who had captured half the town's admiration. But deep down, a quiet alarm kept tolling, a prelude to the storm I hadn't yet seen coming. I didn't know it then, but that storm was already gathering strength, poised to change everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and the price of desire. In the weeks following that unsettling barbecue, the tension in our lives grew like an undercurrent too silent to notice but powerful enough to disturb the still waters. I, Mark Anderson, found myself oscillating between trust and suspicion. Every whispered conversation and every secretive glance that Jessica exchanged with someone now seemed loaded with unspoken meaning. One Monday evening, I returned home later than usual after a long day at the office. The house was dimly lit and I could hear the murmur of voices coming from the living room. Jessica and Samantha were there, deep in conversation. I paused in the hallway, silently straining to catch fragments of their dialogue. "You know, sometimes I feel like I'm playing a double role," Samantha said in a hushed tone, her words barely audible but heavy with implication. "There's a whole side of this business that even Jessica doesn't see coming." Jessica's reply was soft yet resolute. "I'm doing what I love, Sam. I never imagined that the attention would come with so much scrutiny. But I have my reasons and I trust those I work with." Before I could process this, the conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. It was Ryan Mitchell, whose visit always carried an unspoken message. He greeted us with his trademark smile, but tonight there was an edge in his eyes. "Hey, Mark. Mind if I come in?" I ran into Michelle Roberts on the way here. She wanted to talk about something. Michelle Roberts was a name I'd heard in passing, another figure in our intertwined circle of friends and acquaintances. Introduced by Ryan as someone who'd recently moved to our town, her reputation was built on her sharp wit and an uncanny ability to notice what others overlooked. As Ryan and Michelle entered, the atmosphere shifted. Over a cup of coffee in the quiet of our study, the four of us engaged in a conversation that would soon set the stage for revelations yet to come. "Mark," Michelle began gently, "I know this might sound odd, but have you ever noticed how Jessica seems to be living two lives?" Her tone was soft yet inquisitive, laced with genuine concern. I frowned. "What do you mean?" Ryan leaned forward. "Michelle's got a knack for reading between the lines. She's noticed that sometimes when you're out or busy, Jessica is unusually distant, like she's waiting for a secret call or message." Before I could interject, Michelle continued, "I'm not saying anything definitive, but it's like there's a side of her that's deliberately hidden. Last week, I saw her stepping out of a nondescript building in downtown Cleveland, looking nervous, almost as if she was meeting someone she didn't want to be seen with." My heart raced at her words, but I tried to remain calm. "Maybe it's nothing, just the nature of her work," I suggested, though even I was not entirely convinced by my own excuse. Jessica, who had been silent during our conversation, interjected with a laugh that felt forced. "You all have such vivid imaginations." "Mark, you worry too much," she said, trying to deflect the tension. "Ryan, Michelle, let's not make this a discussion of conspiracy theories about me. I have a career to manage and a reputation to uphold." But the seed of doubt had already been planted. Over the next few days, I found myself observing Jessica more intently. I began to notice the way she would check her phone in a secluded corner of the kitchen, or how her laughter would die down when certain names were mentioned. The more I looked, the more questions arose, and my mind was filled with silent interrogations. One rainy afternoon, while I was working from home, I heard a heated conversation outside our bedroom window. Intrigued and anxious, I quietly opened the door a crack and listened. Jessica's voice was unmistakable. She was speaking with someone in a tone that mixed urgency with tenderness. "I can't keep doing this, Jessica. It's tearing me apart," came a voice I didn't recognize, low and trembling. Jessica's response was barely audible over the patter of rain. "I know, but right now we're both in too deep. Just trust me." I quickly shut the door, my heart pounding. Who was she talking to? And what was she hiding? The unanswered questions now mingled with the creeping sensation that everything was about to change. That evening, determined to quell my growing unease, I invited my friend Tom Jensen over, a colleague who had a reputation for being discreet and insightful. Tom was someone I trusted, and I hoped a candid conversation might help me sort out my swirling thoughts. "Mark, you look troubled," Tom said as we settled into the study with 2 cups of coffee. "What's going on?" I hesitated for a moment before admitting, "I'm not sure." "It's Jessica. Lately, I've noticed things, secretive phone calls, hushed conversations. Even a conversation I overheard that suggested she might be involved with someone else. I'm trying to convince myself it's just my imagination, but I can't shake the feeling." Tom leaned back, his gaze thoughtful. "Relationships can be complicated, Mark. Sometimes we see what we fear, not what truly is. But if something feels off, it's worth paying attention to. His words, though measured, confirmed my inner turmoil. I knew I needed to confront these uncertainties, but the fear of facing the truth paralyzed me. The following day, while Jessica was out on a supposed business errand with Samantha, I attempted to reach out to her. "Jess," I said, taking her hand as we sat down for dinner, "I feel like there's something you're not telling me. I know you have a busy schedule with your work, but can we be honest with each other?" She looked at me, her eyes clouded with a mix of defiance and vulnerability. "Mark, I've told you before, there's nothing more to it than my career. I'm doing what I love and I'm proud of it. Why would I hide anything from you?" Her words, meant to reassure, instead fanned the flames of my doubts. The conversation ended with a forced smile and a promise that everything was perfectly fine, but I sensed that she was holding back a truth that might one day unravel our entire world. As days turned into weeks, the web of secrets continued to thicken. Michelle's observation about Jessica's mysterious nighttime meetings and Ryan's offhand remarks about her guarded behavior added layers of complexity to my inner monologue. Meanwhile, conversations among our friends hinted at whispers and rumors that even the most unassuming citizens of our town had caught wind of something unusual. Late one night, while scrolling through a local forum on my phone, I came across a thread that mentioned Jessica's name. The comments were cryptic, blending admiration with disapproval, and one in particular caught my eye. "When the lights dim, truth is revealed." I couldn't help but wonder if this was just another facet of the myth that had grown around her or an ominous premonition. Every new day was a delicate balance between hope and dread. I was caught in the crossfire of my love for Jessica and the relentless pursuit of an elusive truth. The more I searched for answers, the deeper I sank into a quagmire of suspicion where every smile and every touch seemed laced with secrets. Even as I prepared for another day of work, the voices of my friends echoed in my mind. Ryan's gentle warnings, Michelle's keen observations, and Tom's thoughtful advice all blended into a cacophony of doubt that I could not easily silence. My nights became restless, filled with dreams where the faces of those I trusted morphed into those who betrayed me. Little did I know the puzzle was only beginning to take shape. Behind the veneer of Jessica's success and the sparkle of her public image, a carefully guarded narrative was unfolding, a narrative that would eventually force me to confront the unimaginable. I lay awake on that fateful night, the rain tapping softly against the window, and realized that the journey ahead would force me to choose between the comforting lie of ignorance and the painful truth of betrayal. The clock ticked on relentlessly, marking the moments until the storm would break and I would have to face the truth that lay hidden in the shadows of our once perfect life. I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was teetering on the brink of collapse. The more I delved into the whispered rumors and furtive glances, the more I sensed that something significant lay beneath Jessica's radiant smile. Every day felt like a balancing act between disbelief and a gnawing intuition that our lives were not as perfect as they seemed. A few days after that rainy night, the atmosphere at home grew noticeably colder. I returned from work to find Jessica sitting alone in our dim living room, her eyes fixed on something I couldn't see. The silence between us was deafening. I cleared my throat, determined to bridge the widening gap. "Jess, we need to talk," I said, my voice tentative but firm. "Something's been off lately, and I feel like you're holding back." She looked up, her eyes flickering with surprise before she quickly masked it with a practiced calm. "Mark, it's nothing. I've just been tired," she replied, her tone too light to be convincing. I wasn't satisfied. "It's more than that. The phone calls, the secret meetings, even our friends seem to be hinting at something. I deserve the truth." Her gaze hardened for a moment before softening into something sorrowful. "You always have to make everything into a crisis, don't you?" she murmured. "I'm doing what I love, Mark. This isn't about hiding from you, it's about building a future. Why can't you see that?" The words stung, and I could feel the anger and confusion rising within me. Before I could respond, there was a knock at the door. Reluctantly, Jessica excused herself and went to answer it. I could hear muffled voices, a mix of urgency and familiar tones. It wasn't long before Ryan entered, his presence an unwelcome reminder of our tangled network of friendships and secrets. "Mark, we need to talk," Ryan said as soon as he joined us in the living room, his expression solemn. "I've been thinking about everything, and it's not just you feeling uneasy. There's something bigger happening here than just marital spats." I felt a cold pit form in my stomach. "What do you mean, Ryan?" I asked, leaning forward. Ryan hesitated, then said, "I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but I've heard things from multiple sources. People are saying that Jessica isn't the only one living a double life. There are whispers about other connections, affairs, secrets that go far beyond her work on OnlyFans." At that, Jessica's face paled and she clutched her purse tightly as if it were a lifeline. "Ryan, please," she pleaded, "don't start with these baseless accusations. But Ryan pressed on, his voice low. Mark, I value our friendship too much not to be honest. Last night, I saw Jessica leaving a hotel in downtown Cleveland with a man I don't recognize. I wasn't sure if I should say anything, but I couldn't let it slide. This isn't just about an occasional meeting. It feels like she's juggling more than just her career. My mind raced as I tried to piece together the fragments of a narrative that didn't quite fit. Who was he? I asked, my voice barely concealing the tremor of fear and uncertainty. I don't know his name, Ryan admitted. But he was with her, a man who didn't look like he belonged to our circle at all. The conversation was interrupted when Tom Jensen phoned. His voice, always a mix of concern and pragmatism, came through the line. Mark, I've been hearing some unsettling stories too. I think it's time we all sat down and talked this out. There's too much at stake if we continue to let these suspicions fester. Later that evening, I arranged for a meeting at a quiet coffee shop where our small circle of friends could come together without the constraints of our familiar home environments. One by one, Ryan, Tom, Michelle, and even Samantha showed up, their expressions mirroring my own concern. We gathered around a small table in the back, away from prying eyes. Mark, we all care about you, Michelle began, her voice gentle yet firm. But we can't ignore what we've been noticing. It's not just the odd phone calls or secret meetings, it's a pattern of behavior that suggests there's more going on than you know. I listened as each of them recounted what they'd observed, Jessica's unexplained absences, the hurried whispers on her phone, and the mysterious man seen entering a hotel. Yet every time the topic returned to her, I hesitated, clinging to the hope that there was a simple explanation. Samantha, whose role as Jessica's business manager should have provided her with insights, finally spoke up. Mark, I've been trying to support Jessica in her career, but lately even I'm not in the dark. There have been meetings arranged without any clear purpose, and some of these names aren't even in our client list. I'm afraid Jessica has been making choices that could hurt both her reputation and our relationships. The room fell into a heavy silence. I could feel my heart pounding as the realization sank in. This was not a case of professional ambiguity, but something far more personal and painful. I asked, have any of you talked to her directly about this? A chorus of soft, regretful shuffles and sighs filled the space. We've tried, Ryan said, but she always deflects, changes the subject, or becomes defensive. It's as if she's scared of being caught in a web of her own making. At that moment, my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. Mark, sometimes truth is hidden behind the perfect smile. Meet me at the old pier at midnight. You need to see it for yourself. The message chilled me to the bone, its cryptic nature amplifying my inner turmoil. Who would send such a message? And what truth was waiting at the old pier? I glanced around the table, searching the faces of my friends for answers. But none could offer a clear explanation. That night, torn between dread and the desperate need for clarity, I resolved to go to the pier. I needed to confront the unknown head-on, even if it meant shattering whatever illusion of normalcy I had left. Under a cold, starless sky, I arrived at the old pier, a place that had once been a symbol of carefree summer nights and laughter. Now it loomed ominously, a silent witness to the unraveling of my world. The sound of the lapping waves was both soothing and mournful, as if nature itself was mourning the loss of innocence. I waited, every nerve on edge, until a lone figure emerged from the shadows. It was a woman with an air of quiet determination. Mark Anderson? She asked, her voice soft yet confident. I nodded, feeling a mixture of apprehension and hope. Who are you? What do you know about Jessica? She took a deep breath. My name is Olivia. I worked with Jessica a long time ago, before her OnlyFans career took off. Back then, we were close. I saw the transformation in her, the way she tried so hard to be seen as more than just an internet sensation. But there's something else, something that she left behind, a secret that she's been trying to bury. My heart pounded. What secret? Olivia hesitated, as if weighing the consequences of her words. It's not just about her career. Jessica had a past, a connection to people who aren't part of this world, people who thrive in the shadows, where deals are made and promises are broken. I know this might be hard to believe, but sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction. Before I could press her for more details, the distant sound of sirens cut through the night. Olivia's eyes widened. We don't have much time, Mark. If you truly want to know the truth, you have to be prepared for what comes next. As she hurried away into the darkness, I was left alone with more questions than answers. The cryptic revelations, the unsettling confessions from my friends, and now this mysterious warning from Olivia. They all pointed to a deeper, more dangerous web of deceit than I had ever imagined. I realized that the life I thought I knew was built on fragile illusions, and the storm was gathering strength. Standing alone at the edge of the pier, with the cold wind whispering secrets into the night, I knew one thing for certain. The time for denial was over. I was about to step into a realm where loyalty was a luxury and every truth had its price. And as I stared out into the dark waters, I wondered if I was ready to pay that price. The morning after my fateful meeting at the pier, a chill settled over me that no amount of coffee or reassurance could shake off. I awoke with a persistent knot in my stomach, a mix of dread and the need to understand. The cryptic conversation with Olivia had left me reeling. Her words had hinted at a secret side of Jessica that was darker and more entangled than I could have ever imagined. At breakfast, the silence between Jessica and me was palpable. I could almost hear the ticking of the clock as I wrestled with my thoughts. Finally, I broke the stillness. "Jess, we need to talk. I haven't been sleeping well, and every time I think about last night, about Olivia, I feel like I'm losing my grip on reality," I said, my voice unsteady but resolute. Jessica's eyes narrowed slightly. "Mark, you're overthinking again. There's nothing going on. Olivia's just someone from my past. Nothing more." Her tone was dismissive, but the tremor in her voice betrayed a hint of anxiety. I leaned forward, determined to uncover the truth. "That may be what you want me to believe, but my friends, the rumors, and now Olivia, it all points to something more. I deserve an honest explanation." Before she could respond, the doorbell rang. Reluctantly, Jessica excused herself and went to answer it. Standing on our doorstep was Michael Rhodes. His expression conflicted as he clutched a manila envelope. "Michael, what's all this about?" I asked, rising from the table. He hesitated, glancing between Jessica and me. "Mark, I'm sorry to drop this on you, but I found these documents in Jessica's old storage unit. They might explain some of what's been happening." His voice was low, burdened with the weight of secrets. Inside the envelope were old photographs and bank statements dating back several years. Documents that linked Jessica to a network of shady figures involved in clandestine deals. The images showed her smiling alongside individuals who clearly belonged to a world far removed from our quiet suburban life. Jessica's face went pale as she snatched the envelope from Michael's hands. "This is private, Michael. I can explain," she began, but I cut her off. "Explain what, Jessica? That you led a double life long before we ever met? That you were involved with people who didn't want the public eye?" I asked, my tone a mix of hurt and incredulity. Michael interjected, "Mark, I don't want to hurt you, but these aren't just old business transactions. They're tied to something bigger, something dangerous." Jessica's eyes welled with tears as she looked at me. "Mark, I never meant for you to find out like this. I was young and I made choices I thought were necessary for survival. I never wanted to hurt you." The room fell into a suffocating silence. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I tried to process the new revelations. Was this the secret life Olivia had hinted at? A past fraught with dangerous connections that Jessica had long left behind? Later that day, I decided to visit the old storage unit myself. I needed to see the evidence with my own eyes to understand the magnitude of what Jessica had hidden. I arrived at a dilapidated building on the outskirts of town where the faded letters on the door read Anderson Storage. Inside, amidst dusty boxes and forgotten relics, I found a trove of memorabilia, old diaries, photos, and even a USB drive labeled with dates from years ago. As I sifted through the items, my mind raced back to all the subtle signs I had ignored, the hushed phone calls, the unexplained absences, the late-night rendezvous. Each piece of evidence now painted a picture of a woman with a past that was not only hidden but actively suppressed. That evening, I called Ryan to discuss what I had found. "Ryan, I went to the storage unit. I found documents, photos, bank records, things that confirmed Jessica was involved in deals with people I'd never imagined. What the hell is going on?" Ryan's voice was heavy with regret. "Mark, I've been worried about you for a long time. I didn't want to believe it could be true, but now I think she's been entangled in something dangerous since before we even met. It's like she was living two lives and one of them was far darker than I ever suspected." Over the next few days, my home turned into a battlefield of conflicting emotions. I confronted Jessica multiple times. In our tense living room, I demanded answers. Jessica, who are these people? Why didn't you ever tell me that you were involved with them? I asked one evening, holding one of the old photographs tightly in my hand. Her eyes were downcast as she replied, Mark, I thought I could leave that life behind. I thought I could reinvent myself as someone new, a wife, a partner, someone you could be proud of. But those shadows have a way of following you, no matter how hard you try to run. Tears streamed down her face as she continued, I got involved with them when I was desperate, trying to secure a future I never thought I'd have. I didn't want to be seen as weak or vulnerable, so I made choices that I thought would empower me. I thought I could control it, but I lost control along the way. At that moment, the air was heavy with the sound of our shared pain. Ryan and Tom, who had come over earlier to offer their support, exchanged worried glances. Mark, this is serious, Tom said softly. You need to consider what this means for your safety, too. I nodded slowly, torn between the woman I once loved and the dangerous web she had spun. Jess, I want to believe you, but you can't keep secrets from me. Not now, when everything is coming apart. My voice wavered between anger and sorrow. In the days that followed, our once peaceful home became a stage for heated discussions and tearful confrontations. Samantha, who had remained relatively silent since the revelations, finally spoke during one of our group meetings. Jessica, if you truly love Mark, you need to come clean about everything. Not just the parts that are convenient. This isn't just about your past, it's about the dangerous people you're still in contact with. It's about the risk you're putting on everyone's lives, she admonished, her tone both stern and pleading. Jessica's response was a shaky whisper, I'm trying to make amends. I've severed ties with those people, or so I thought. I've been trying to rebuild a life that I never imagined was possible. Her eyes pleaded for understanding, but I wasn't sure I could look at her the same way again. That night, as I sat alone in the darkened study, the phone rang unexpectedly. It was an unknown number. I answered, and a distorted voice came through. Mark Anderson, you've been digging too deep. Some secrets are best left buried. The line went dead before I could react. My pulse raced as I stared at the phone in disbelief. It was a threat, plain and simple. And it wasn't just a warning, it was a promise of more danger to come. The realization hit me hard. Jessica's past was not only a matter of personal betrayal, it was a gateway to a world of criminality and peril. The life I had built with her was now intertwined with risks I had never imagined. I realized that uncovering the truth might come at a steep price, a price that could cost not only our relationship but possibly our lives. In a desperate bid for clarity and protection, I reached out to an old contact of mine, a private investigator named Daniel Green. Daniel was known for his discretion and his knack for uncovering hidden truths. Over a quiet dinner at a small diner, I laid out everything I had discovered, showing him the photographs, documents, and even recounting that ominous phone call. Daniel listened intently, his eyes narrowing as he pieced together the fragments of Jessica's past. Mark, this is bigger than a personal betrayal. These people, if they're still in contact with her, they might be dangerous. I need to do some digging, but you should be cautious. Don't confront her directly until we know more. As I left the diner that night, a heavy sense of foreboding weighed on me. I felt isolated, caught between the love I once had for Jessica and the reality of the dangerous world she had once been a part of. Every step I took from now on felt laden with uncertainty. Was I prepared to face the full scope of this unraveling, knowing that every revelation might push me further away from the life I thought I knew? The days turned into a blur of tense meetings, hushed phone calls, and furtive glances from those around me. Ryan, Tom, Samantha, and even Michelle banded together, forming an uneasy alliance determined to protect one another from the lurking dangers. Yet, as I delved deeper into the labyrinth of Jessica's past, I couldn't help but wonder if there was any way to salvage what was left of our relationship or if the truth would ultimately tear us all apart. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the shadows grew longer, Jessica and I sat on our back porch. The silence between us was thick, charged with unspoken words and shattered trust. Finally, she broke the silence. Mark, I know I've hurt you. I know I've lied, and I'm sorry. I never intended for any of this to happen. I looked into her eyes, searching for the woman I once knew. Jess, I need the truth. I need to know if there's any part of you left that can be trusted. I'm scared for you, for me, for all of us. Tears glistened in her eyes as she whispered, I promise, Mark, I'll tell you everything. No more secrets. But as the words left her lips, I couldn't help but feel that we were standing on the precipice of a truth too heavy to bear, a truth that would soon force us to confront the consequences of a past that refused to stay buried. And so, with the darkness of night closing in around us, I braced myself for the next step, a step that would determine whether the bonds of trust could ever be rebuilt or if the unraveling of our lives would lead us into a descent from which there was no return. The tension reached its peak on a cold, rain-soaked evening. I, Mark Anderson, sat across from Jessica on our creaking back porch, the silence between us as heavy as the storm clouds overhead. The weight of her secrets and the threats that now loomed over us pressed in from all sides. Daniel Green had unearthed alarming details. Jessica's former ties were not entirely severed, and dangerous men were watching our every move. "Jess," I began, my voice trembling, "we can't live in fear anymore. I need to know, are you still in contact with those people?" Her eyes, red from tears and regret, met mine. "Mark, I tried to cut every link, but they always find a way back. I'm trapped in a past I can't escape," she whispered. Before I could respond, the shrill ring of the phone shattered the fragile calm. It was Daniel. "Mark, we've got trouble," his urgent tone announced. I intercepted a message. "They plan to meet tonight, and you're in danger." My heart pounded as I exchanged a look with Jessica. "We need to act now," I declared. "No more secrets, no more lies." Together, we raced to a safe house arranged by Daniel. Along the journey, Jessica's confession spilled out, her desperate choices to secure a future, the threats, and the manipulation by criminals who preyed on her vulnerability. "I never wanted to hurt you," she sobbed. "I was trying to survive." I clenched my jaw, torn between love and betrayal. "Jess, surviving shouldn't cost us our souls," I murmured, the storm of emotions raging within. At the safe house, our small circle, Ryan, Tom, Samantha, Michelle, and Daniel gathered in a tense, makeshift war room. Plans were hatched, strategies to expose and dismantle the network were set in motion. In a final, hushed moment before the confrontation, I took Jessica's hand. "I don't know if we can ever go back to what we were," I said, voice raw, "but I promise I'll fight for us if you fight for the truth." Her tearful nod was both a plea for redemption and an admission of ruin. As the night deepened and our enemies closed in, I realized that this reckoning was not just about exposing a betrayal. It was about reclaiming the trust we had lost, even if it meant sacrificing everything. In that fragile moment between danger and hope, the final chapter of our shattered lives began.